When your best friend comes home from a date crying, you expect to make tea, insult the guy with professional level creativity, and maybe let her steal your favorite hoodie. You do not expect her to stand in your bedroom doorway at 11:47 on a Friday night, mascara under her eyes, high heels dangling from one hand, and ask, "Can I stay in your room tonight?" That was the moment my whole life tilted. My name is Nathan Reed. I was 32, a graphic designer for a small marketing agency in Portland, and I had spent most of my adult life being the safe guy. Safe son, safe employee, safe friend. Especially to Tessa Morgan. Tessa had been my best friend for 6 years, ever since she moved into the apartment across the hall and locked herself out on her first day while holding a dying fern and a bag of frozen dumplings. I helped her break into her own place with a library card and a butter knife. She accused me of being alarmingly useful, then made me dinner as payment. The dumplings were half burned. The fern died anyway. We had been inseparable since. She was 29, a middle school art teacher with paint under her fingernails more often than not, dark curls she claimed had legal independence, and a laugh that could make a bad day feel like it had been exaggerated. And yes, before anyone starts yelling at the screen, I knew she was beautiful. I knew it in the quiet, inconvenient way you know where the bruise is without touching it. I knew it when she fell asleep during movie nights with one sock missing. I knew it when she argued with the self-checkout machine like it had personally betrayed her. I knew it when she leaned over my kitchen counter eating cereal at midnight, telling me about whatever man she was trying to like because he was emotionally available on paper. I had loved her quietly enough to pass as friendship. That Friday night, she had a date with a guy named Derek Wells, an orthodontist she met through another teacher. Derek owned a lake house, wore expensive sweaters, and had teeth so white they looked like they had a publicist. He seemed stable, Tessa had said earlier that evening, standing in my living room while I pretended not to notice the way her green dress wrapped around her waist. Stable is what people say about ladders and internet connections, I told her. She pointed one heel at me. Do not be weird. I'm not being weird. I'm being concerned for America's single women. You're being jealous. I laughed too quickly. Of a man who spends his day telling people to floss? Please. She smiled then, but not like she believed me. More like she wanted me to say something else and was disappointed when I didn't. That was our problem. We were experts at almost. Almost saying it. Almost touching too long. Almost changing the subject before it hurt. So she left for her date, and I spent the evening doing exactly what a mature adult man does when the woman he's in love with goes out with someone else. I reorganized my kitchen junk drawer. Twice. Around 11:30, I was on my couch with a beer I didn't want and a baseball game I wasn't watching when I heard the elevator ding down the hall. Then footsteps. Fast ones. Then a key scraping against a lock. Not her lock. Mine. I stood up just as my apartment door opened. Tessa stepped inside like she had used the last of herself getting there. Her curls had loosened from whatever careful style she'd done, her lipstick was gone, and there were tear tracks cutting through her makeup. My heart went cold. Tess? She shut the door behind her and leaned back against it. For a second, she didn't speak. She just looked at me like she had been holding her breath for miles and had finally found air. I crossed the room, then stopped before I touched her. That was another thing about us. I always waited for permission. What happened? I asked. She shook her head. Can you not ask me that yet? Okay. My voice came out softer than I expected. She looked down at her shoes, then gave a tiny, broken laugh. I know I look dramatic. You look like you survived a board meeting with vampires. That got the smallest smile. It vanished almost immediately, but I counted it. I didn't want to go to my apartment, she said. Then don't. My couch is by the window. Mine isn't. My bed feels… She swallowed. I don't know, I just don't want to be alone in there. Something about the way she said alone made every joke in me sit down and shut up. You can stay here, I said. Couch is yours, bed is yours, whole place is yours. Her eyes flicked toward my hallway, toward my room, then back to me. Nate, she whispered, can I stay in your room tonight? The apartment went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. I should have answered like a normal best friend. Of course, no problem. I'll take the couch. Instead, for half a second, I looked at her and remembered every almost we had buried between us. Her hand brushing mine in the popcorn bowl. Her head on my shoulder during thunderstorms. The time she said, "If we're both single at 40, we should just get married." And I said, "Make it 35." And she got quiet for the rest of the movie. Now she was asking for my room, not because she was flirting, not because this was some romantic setup, but because something had hurt her badly enough to make my doorway feel safer than her own. Still, when she stepped closer, close enough that I could smell rain and her perfume, something changed in her face. "I don't mean," she started. "I know. I just need to sleep somewhere I can hear you breathing." That sentence did something to me I wasn't proud of. It reached under all my careful restraint and pulled. I nodded. "Then you'll hear me breathing." Her chin trembled. I took one step forward and opened my arms, slow enough for her to refuse. She didn't. She came into me hard, pressing her face into my chest, one hand clutching the back of my t-shirt. I wrapped my arms around her and felt her shake. It was not the first time I had held Tessa, but it was the first time she held me like letting go would cost her something. After a while, she said into my shirt, "You smell like laundry and panic." I reorganized the junk drawer. She gave a wet laugh against my chest. "Because of my date?" "No, because batteries and rubber bands deserve structure." She pulled back just enough to look at me. Her eyes were red, but there was something else there too, something bare and dangerous. "You always do that," she said. "What?" "Make me laugh right before I fall apart." I wanted to touch her cheek. I wanted it so badly my hand actually moved before I stopped it. She noticed. Tessa always noticed. For one suspended second, neither of us pretended. Then her phone buzzed in the small purse hanging from her wrist. Once, twice, 3 times. Her face drained. I looked down. "Is that him?" She didn't answer. The phone buzzed again, and this time the screen lit up bright enough for both of us to see the message. "Derek. Tell your roommate I said hi." Tessa went rigid in my arms. My voice came out low. "How does he know you're here?" She looked up at me, tears gathering fresh in her eyes, and whispered, "Because I never told him I had a roommate." For a second, I didn't move. Tessa's phone glowed between us like a live wire. "Derek, tell your roommate I said hi." Only, I wasn't her roommate. I lived across the hall. Tessa stared at the message, her fingers white around the little gold chain of her purse. "Nate," she said, barely audible. "I didn't tell him your name. I didn't tell him where I lived. I just said I was getting a ride home." My pulse kicked hard. "What happened on the date?" She closed her eyes. "I'll tell you. Just not standing here." That snapped me out of it. Right. I took the phone from her only when she let me, turned it face down on the entry table, and guided her toward the kitchen. "Sit. I'm not a Victorian orphan. You are pale, trembling, and wearing shoes designed by a man who hates ankles. Sit." She sat. I made tea because it was something to do with my hands that wasn't punching a wall or reaching for her face. While the kettle heated, Tessa slipped out of her heels and pulled her knees onto the chair, green dress pooling around her thighs. I had seen her in pajamas, in paint-splattered overalls, in an oversized sweatshirt with a cartoon raccoon on it. Seeing her like this, gorgeous and shattered at my kitchen table, hurt in a way I didn't have a file folder for. She wrapped both hands around the mug when I set it down. "Derek was fine at first," she said. "Too polished, maybe. He kept calling the waiter boss, which felt like a crime, but fine. Unforgivable." A weak smile touched her mouth. Then he started asking questions, not normal questions. Where exactly do I live? Which apartment? Do I have brothers? Do I usually come home late? Do I keep my phone location on? Every muscle in me tightened. When I laughed it off, he got annoyed, like I'd failed a test. He said women were always dramatic about safety until they wanted men to pay for dinner. She looked down into her tea. "I told him I could pay for my own dinner." "Of course you did." And then he said, "Is that what Nathan tells you to say?" My stomach dropped. "He used my name?" She nodded. "I asked how he knew you. He smiled like it was funny and said, 'You talk about him a lot for someone you're not dating.'" The apartment felt suddenly smaller. Tessa's eyes lifted to mine. "Do I?" I was ready for more fear, more details, more Derek. I was not ready for that question. "What?" "Talk about you a lot." My mouth went dry. Apparently enough to ruin orthodontists. She didn't laugh this time. She studied me over the rim of her mug. "I left after that," she said. "I ordered a car and came here. I didn't even think, I just came to you." Something unfurled inside my chest, warm and terrifying. "You should always come to me," I said. Her gaze softened. "That sounds like a rule. It can be a standing invitation. Nathan Reed, are you offering me unlimited emotional support with no subscription fee? First month free, after that you owe me dumplings." Burned? Tradition matters. This time she laughed for real and the sound loosened the knot around my ribs. Then her phone buzzed from the entry table. We both looked. I wanted to check it. I wanted to know. But Tessa's shoulders had just dropped for the first time since she walked in, and I refused to let Derek sit at my kitchen table with us like a ghost. I turned back to her. "We don't have to read it." Her eyes searched mine. "You're not going to?" "Not unless you want me to." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "I don't want him in here." "Then he's not in here." The words felt bigger than the situation. Maybe because her face changed when I said them, like I had handed her something she'd been waiting years to receive. I made up the bed while she changed into clothes I left outside the bathroom door. Sweatpants that would swallow her whole and one of my old college t-shirts. When she came out, hair washed, face clean, sleeves hanging past her hands, I forgot how to breathe for a second. She noticed that too. "You're staring," she said. "You're wearing my shirt. You gave it to me. I didn't know it was going to commit treason." Her lips curved. "Against what?" "My ability to function." The words were out before I could drag them back. Tessa stood in the hallway soft and barefoot, and the space between us filled with all the things we usually turned into jokes before they caught fire. "Nate," she said carefully, "if I ask you something, will you actually answer?" "That depends how damaging it is. Were you jealous tonight?" I could have lied. I had lied before, mostly by smiling at the right places and saying nothing. But she had come to me in tears. She had asked to hear me breathe. The least I could do was stop hiding behind the furniture of our friendship. "Yes," I said. Her expression flickered. I rubbed a hand over my jaw. "Not in a caveman way. I don't think you owe me anything. You can date whoever you want. I exhaled. I hate watching men get chances I'm too scared to ask for." Tessa went still. There it was. 6 years of almost lying on the floor between us. Her voice was very soft. "Why were you scared?" "Because you're my best friend." "That's not an answer." "It's the whole problem." She stepped closer. "Try again." My heart beat so hard I felt it in my throat. "Because if I asked and you said no, I'd lose the place I come home to." Her eyes shone, but not with fear now. "You idiot," she whispered. I blinked. "That's not the response I rehearsed." She came closer until she was right in front of me, close enough that the hem of my shirt brushed her thighs and her bare toes nearly touched mine. "You are the place I come home to," she said. I forgot every language I knew. Tessa lifted one hand and touched my chest, right over my heart. "I'm not saying tonight is simple. It isn't. I'm shaken up and tired and probably still processing the fact that my date was a human red flag with dental benefits." A laugh escaped me, rough and relieved. "But I don't want to pretend anymore," she said. "Not with you." My hand rose to cover hers. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even an embrace. But when our fingers laced together, it felt like crossing a border. We stood there holding hands in the hallway like teenagers, both of us breathing too fast. Then Tessa looked toward my bedroom and gave me a small, shy smile I had never seen on her before. "So," she said, About hearing you breathe. I swallowed. Right. Very important medical supervision. Strictly clinical. Obviously. We got into bed like two people handling explosives. I stayed on top of the comforter at first because I had limits and most of them were currently on fire. Tessa lay on her side facing me, my shirt collar slipping off one shoulder. Are you seriously sleeping on top of the blanket? She asked. I'm being respectful. You look like a Victorian orphan now. I turned my head. Rude. She reached for my hand under the edge of the pillow. Come under the blanket, Nate. That was not a sentence my nervous system was equipped to process. I did, carefully. She shifted closer until her forehead nearly touched my chin. For a while, we just breathed. Then, in the dark, she said, I think I've been choosing terrible dates because they were safer than choosing you. My chest ached. I brushed my thumb over her knuckles. I'm not feeling very safe right now. Her quiet laugh warmed my throat. Good. A moment later, her phone buzzed again from the living room. Tessa didn't move. Neither did I. Then the sound came a second time. And a third. She pressed her face against my chest and I wrapped my arm around her. Tomorrow, she whispered. Tomorrow, I agreed. But just before sleep took her, my phone lit up on the nightstand. Unknown number. She always runs to you, doesn't she? I did not sleep. Tessa did. She slept with one hand curled in my t-shirt and her knee tucked between mine like she had always belonged there and had only been delayed by stubbornness, fear, and several bad decisions in men. My phone sat face down on the nightstand. Unknown number. She always runs to you, doesn't she? I read it once. Then I turned the phone over and looked at Tessa instead. That was the choice I made. Not to let some smug stranger steal the first night she had ever reached for me without pretending it was accidental. Not to wake her up just to put fear back in her body. Not to turn us into a crime scene when, for the first time in 6 years, we were almost something else. So I stayed still and listened to her breathe. Around dawn, she stirred. Her lashes fluttered, and for one perfect, dangerous second, she forgot everything. She looked up at me from my pillow, warm and sleepy in my shirt, and smiled. Hi, she whispered. My chest did something embarrassing. Hi. Then memory returned. The smile faded, but not completely. You didn't sleep, she said. I slept artistically. You're a terrible liar. I'm an excellent liar. You're just annoyingly observant. Her fingers flexed against my chest. Did he text again? I hesitated. There was no way around it. Not if we were going to stop hiding from each other. My phone, I said. She went very still. I reached for it, showed her the message, and watched anger sharpen through the worry in her face. She always runs to you, doesn't she? She read aloud. I expected her to pull away. Instead, she sat up, hair wild, eyes dark, and said, He makes it sound like I'm a habit. To be fair, you do steal my cereal with impressive consistency. Nate? I know. She looked at the phone, then at me. I'm sorry. No. You got dragged into this because of me? No, I said again, sitting up too. I got dragged into this because some man couldn't handle hearing the word no. That is not your fault. Her mouth trembled. I reached for her hand, but this time she was the one who moved first. She slid her fingers between mine and held on tightly. I hate that he knows about you, she said. I don't. Her eyes lifted. I swallowed because the truth had teeth. I hate why he knows. I hate that he scared you. But I don't hate that people can tell you matter to me. The room went quiet. Tessa stared at me, and the morning light turned her eyes soft gold at the edges. You keep saying things like that, she said. Like what? Like you're not afraid anymore. I'm terrified. Good. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles. Say something else. My laugh came out uneven. You're bossy before coffee. I'm bossy after coffee too, say it. So I did. I want to be the man you choose when you're happy, I said. Not just when you're scared. I want Sunday mornings and grocery lists and to know which side of the bed you steal when you're not having a crisis. I want to take you on dates that don't end with you crying in my doorway. Her eyes filled. You already know which side I steal, she whispered. All of it. That is accurate. And I choose you and I'm happy too. She looked down at our joined hands. I think I've been choosing you in pieces for years. That sentence landed in me like sunlight. I leaned closer before I could overthink it. Tessa. She met me halfway. Our first kiss was not cinematic. There were no violins, no rain against the window, no perfectly timed swell of music. There was just her hand tightening in mine, her breath catching, and my mouth finally touching hers. It was soft at first, careful. A question asked after years of circling the answer. Then she made a tiny sound in the back of her throat and kissed me again. Less careful this time, like she was annoyed at us both for waiting so long. I cupped her cheek. Her skin was warm under my palm. She leaned into me, fingers sliding into my hair, and suddenly, I understood why people wrote poems and ruined friendships and made reckless promises before breakfast. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. Well, she said breathlessly. I nodded. Strong start to the clinical supervision. She laughed, and the sound filled every hollow place in the room. For the next hour, we made a rule. No Derek until coffee. Then we upgraded it to no Derek until pancakes. Then, because Tessa was Tessa, she declared we were having our first official breakfast date and stole a pair of my socks with tiny blue whales on them. You hate those socks, I said, pouring batter into a pan. I hate them on you. On me, they're whimsical. You're wearing my shirt, my sweatpants, and my socks. At what point is this identity theft? She hopped onto the counter, swinging her feet. When I start doing your taxes, I pointed the spatula at her. That might be worth it. She smiled, but then her expression softened in a way that made the kitchen feel intimate and small. This is nice, she said. Pancakes usually are. No, she looked at me. This, you, us, without pretending. The batter hissed in the pan. I set the spatula down and stepped between her knees, close enough that her borrowed socks brushed my hips. I like us without pretending, I said. Her hand slid up my arms. Me too. I kissed her again in the kitchen with one pancake burning behind me. She pulled back first, sniffed, and frowned. Is that our breakfast? That is a sacrifice to the romance gods. They accept. We ate the non-charred pancakes at the counter from one plate because she insisted it was date efficient. Every few minutes, one of us would look at the other and smile like an idiot. It should have felt too fast. It didn't. It felt like arriving late to something that had been waiting with the porch light on. After breakfast, we finally dealt with the messages. We took screenshots. Tessa blocked Derek's number, then unblocked it long enough to send one clear text. Do not contact me again. Then she blocked him for good. My unknown number stayed silent. For a while. By noon, Tessa looked steadier. She showered at her place while I stood in the hallway pretending not to hover, then came back wearing jeans, a sweater, and the expression of someone determined not to be owned by a bad night. Walk? She asked. Anywhere specific? The farmer's market. I want flowers. For your apartment? She shook her head. For your kitchen. It needs evidence that a woman with taste has been here. I looked down at her. Is this you marking territory? She slipped her hand into mine like it was the easiest thing in the world. Yes. My heart tripped. The market was crowded and bright, full of dogs, strollers, and people arguing passionately about tomatoes. Tessa kept hold of my hand the whole time, not because she was afraid, because she wanted to. That difference mattered. She bought sunflowers and a jar of raspberry jam. I bought coffee. We shared a cinnamon roll on a bench, and when sugar stuck to the corner of her mouth, I wiped it away with my thumb. She caught my wrist before I could pull back. Careful, she said. Of what? If you keep looking at me like that, I'm going to kiss you in public. I leaned closer. That a threat? Her smile was slow and gorgeous. A warning. I let her kiss me there, under a gray Portland sky, with cinnamon on her lips and my hand in her hair. When we finally walked back to our building, I felt stupidly, impossibly happy. Then we reached the lobby. On the floor in front of the elevator sat a bouquet of white roses. Tessa stopped. There was a card tucked between the stems. No name on the envelope. Just one word written across the front in neat black ink. Tessa. Tessa stared at the white roses like they had teeth. I felt her hand tighten around mine. For half a second, the lobby sounds blurred. The elevator cables, traffic beyond the glass doors, someone's dog barking outside. All I could see was that neat black ink. Tessa. I didn't touch the flowers, neither did she. Instead, she lifted her chin and looked at me. I'm not running upstairs. The steadiness in her voice did something to me. Okay, I said. I'm also not pretending this is fine. Also okay. And I'm definitely not letting him ruin our cinnamon roll date. I glanced at her. That was a date? Her eyes flicked to mine, annoyed and warm at once. Nathan. What? I need clarity, for legal and emotional reasons. Even with the roses between us, her mouth curved. Yes, it was a date. Good. I squeezed her hand. Because I was excellent. You bought one coffee and let me eat 70% of the cinnamon roll. Exactly. Provider energy. She laughed, small but real, and the roses lost some of their power. We found our building manager, Mr. Alvarez, in his office near the mailroom. He was a retired firefighter with a silver mustache and an intolerance for nonsense. One look at Tessa's face, and his expression changed. These were left for her? He asked. In front of the elevator, I said. He didn't ask dramatic questions. He put on gloves from a first aid kit, picked up the bouquet, and checked the card. Tessa stood beside me, shoulders tight. You don't have to read it, I told her. She took one breath. I want to. Mr. Alvarez handed her the card. Inside, in the same clean handwriting, were 2 lines. You look happy with him. Let's see how long that lasts. The anger that went through me was immediate and bright. Tessa read it once, then closed the card and handed it back. Her face was pale, but her voice didn't shake. I told him not to contact me. Mr. Alvarez nodded. Then we document. I'll pull the lobby camera footage. You call non-emergency and file a report. If he comes here again, we call 911. It helped, having practical steps, screenshots, photos, times, a case number. Facts lined up like chairs after a storm. Derek became less a shadow and more a man leaving evidence. By the time we got upstairs, Tessa looked exhausted. At my door, she paused and glanced across the hall at her apartment. You don't have to stay with me, I said, even though every part of me wanted to ask her to. She looked back. I know. And if you want your own space, I'll be right here. I know that too. She stepped closer, slipped her fingers into the front pocket of my jacket, and tugged me toward her. But I don't want my own space right now, she said. I want yours. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My space has sunflowers now, I said. And terrible socks. And emotional support pancakes. Burned pancakes. One burned pancake. History will be fair to me. Her smile softened, then faded into something more vulnerable. Can we go inside and be us again for a while? That question nearly undid me. Yes, I said, always. Inside, she put the sunflowers in a chipped blue pitcher on my kitchen table. The apartment changed instantly. It looked less like a place I lived alone and more like a place waiting for someone to come back. Tessa caught me staring. What? She asked. Nothing. No, tell me. I leaned against the counter. I was thinking they look right there. The flowers? You! Her expression went still. I hadn't planned to say it, but there it was, honest and quiet between us. She crossed the kitchen slowly and stopped in front of me. You can't keep saying things like that and expect me to remain composed. I'm hoping you don't. Her hands found my waist. Is that so? Yes. She rose onto her toes and kissed me. This one was different from the others. Less surprise, more choice. Her palms slid up my back. Mine settled at her hips, and when she made that soft little sound again, I pulled her closer because I was done pretending I didn't want to. She smiled against my mouth. You're getting better at this. At kissing you? At not acting like I'm made of glass. I drew back just enough to see her face. You're not. No, but I still want to be careful. Her eyes warmed. Careful is good. Worshipful is also acceptable. A laugh broke out of me. Noted. Then she kissed me again until the world narrowed to her sweater under my hands, her curls brushing my jaw, the sweet taste of cinnamon still lingering on her mouth. Eventually, she rested her forehead against my chest. Can I say something selfish? She asked. You have never once asked permission before saying something selfish. She pinched my side. I mean it. I held her tighter. Say it. I don't want to slow down just because last night was scary. Her voice was muffled against my shirt. I know we probably should. I know people would say this is bad timing, but I've wasted so much time trying not to want you that the idea of stepping back now makes me feel sick. My throat tightened. Tess? She looked up. If you need slow, I'll do slow. But don't choose slow because you think I'm confused. I brushed a curl from her cheek. Are you? No. Her gaze held mine. I was confused before. This feels like the least confusing thing in my life. I kissed her forehead because I needed 1 second to survive that. I don't want to step back, I said. I want to step in. Fully. Dates, bad jokes, your art shows, my boring work parties, fighting over blankets. I want the whole ordinary thing with you. Her eyes shone. The whole ordinary thing? With occasional extraordinary kissing. Obviously. And if this gets messy, we handle it together. Not as a rescue mission, as us. She swallowed. As us. It felt like a vow, though neither of us said the word. That evening we made pasta because neither of us had the emotional range for anything complicated. Tessa sat on my counter again, stealing grated parmesan from the bowl and making increasingly unfair comments about my knife skills. You chop garlic like it owes you money, she said. It knows what it did. She laughed, and every time she did, some part of me unclenched. We ate at the tiny table beside the sunflowers. No candles, no music, no grand gestures. Just pasta, rain tapping the windows, her bare foot hooked around my ankle under the table. Halfway through dinner, she looked at me over her glass of water. What are we calling this? My cooking, brave. Us. I set down my fork. The word waited there, enormous. What do you want to call it? I asked. She tilted her head. You first? Coward? Absolutely. I reached across the table and took her hand. I want to call you mine, not like ownership, like belonging, like I get to be yours too. Tessa's face softened in a way I would remember for the rest of my life. Boyfriend? She asked. It was such a simple word. It hit me harder than any confession. Yeah, I said, smiling despite myself. If you'll have me. She squeezed my fingers. I'll have you. Then after a beat she added, boyfriend. I groaned. You're going to make that weird. I'm going to make it unbearable. I look forward to suffering. She leaned across the table and kissed me, smiling the whole time. For the next few hours, we let ourselves be, new. She teased me for blushing when she called me her boyfriend. I learned she hated white roses even before Derek because they looked smug. She learned I had once written 3 unsent birthday cards to her because the first 2 sounded too married. You kept them, she demanded. Absolutely not. Nathan. They may exist in a drawer. She stared at me, delighted. I'm reading them someday. Over my dead body. Fine. At our wedding. We both froze. Then she turned bright pink. I started laughing, and after one horrified second, she did too, hiding her face in my shoulder. Too soon, she said, wildly. But not terrifying? I kissed the top of her head. No, not terrifying. Later, when she fell asleep on my couch with her feet in my lap, my phone buzzed. I checked it carefully, angling the screen away so I wouldn't wake her unless I had to. Unknown number, enjoy playing house? A second message followed. Unknown number. She'll come back to me when she realizes what you are. My hand tightened around the phone. Then a photo came through. It was of Tessa and me at the farmer's market, kissing on the bench. I stared at the photo until my vision blurred. Tessa and me on the bench. Her hand on my jaw, my fingers in her hair. both of us smiling into a kiss we had waited 6 years to have. It should have been ours. Instead, Derek had turned it into proof he was watching. Tessa stirred on the couch. Nate? I locked the phone and looked at her. She was still half asleep, hair mussed, one cheek creased from the pillow. My first instinct was to protect that softness from the ugliness on my screen. But that wasn't partnership. So I told her. She sat up slowly while I showed her the messages in the photo. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she said very quietly, I hate him for making me feel embarrassed about kissing you. That hit harder than I expected. I sat beside her. Don't let him have that. Her eyes lifted to mine. That kiss was ours, I said. So was the cinnamon roll. So was you calling me your boyfriend like you were trying to see if I'd combust. You did combust a little. I did. Privately. With dignity. Despite everything, she smiled. Then her face crumpled. I pulled her into my arms and she came willingly, climbing half into my lap like she had lost patience with distance. Her hands clutched my shirt. I'm angry, she whispered, and scared, but mostly angry. I don't want our beginning to feel haunted. It won't. You can't promise that. No, I admitted. But I can promise this. He doesn't get to be the main story. She went still against me. I kissed her temple. We are. Her breath shook. Then she pulled back just enough to look at me, eyes wet and fierce. Say that again. We are the main story. Tessa kissed me like she needed the words pressed into memory. There was nothing careful about it this time. It was a claim, a choice, a refusal. Her mouth moved over mine with anger and tenderness tangled together, and I held her face in both hands like something precious, not fragile. When she broke away, she rested her forehead against mine. I choose you, she said. Not because I'm scared, not because you're safe. Because I want you, because you're annoying and kind, and you make terrible pancakes, and you've been my favorite person for years. My throat tightened until speaking hurt. I love you, I said. The words came out rough, not polished, not planned. Tessa's lips parted. I almost apologized. Habit, maybe. Fear's final twitch. But then she smiled through her tears. Oh, thank God, she whispered. I love you too. I laughed, and it broke somewhere in the middle. She kissed me again, softer now, and for a few minutes there was no phone, no photo, no man trying to claw his way into our happiness. Just Tessa in my arms, saying my name like it belonged to her. After that, we did the practical things. We sent the new messages and photo to the officer attached to the report. Mr. Alvarez pulled the lobby footage, which showed Derek walking in behind a delivery driver with the roses tucked under his arm. The farmer's market had security cameras too. Derek had not been subtle. Men like that rarely are. They only think they're clever because people have been too polite to call them frightening. The officer called him. Then his employer called him. Then a lawyer called him. By Monday afternoon, Derek stopped texting. By Wednesday, Tessa had a temporary protective order and a new lock. The building added a code to the front entrance. Mr. Alvarez walked around looking satisfied, like he'd personally defeated crime with a clipboard. None of it magically erased the fear. For a while, Tessa still checked windows. I still woke when my phone buzzed at night. We still had moments where the shadow of him crossed the room, but every time it did, we turned back to each other. That became our rebellion. On Friday, 1 week after she came home crying from that date, I took Tessa out properly. Not pancakes in my kitchen, not cinnamon rolls under surveillance. A real date. I made a reservation at a tiny Italian place she loved but claimed was too romantic for friends, which in retrospect should have been admitted into evidence years ago. She wore a blue dress this time. I nearly walked into a parking meter. You okay? She asked, slipping her hand into mine. No, you're weaponized. She grinned. Good. At dinner, she reached across the table and stole my olive. That was mine, I said. You're my boyfriend. Your olives are community property. I didn't agree to that. You said you wanted the whole ordinary thing. I didn't know it included olive theft. It includes so much theft. I loved her so much in that moment it scared me less than it should have. After dinner, we walked along the river. The city lights trembled on the water, and Tessa leaned into my side like she'd done it 100 times. Do you ever think, she said, about how close we came to missing this? All the time. She looked up. Why didn't we say something sooner? Because we were idiots. True. And because loving your best friend feels like standing in front of a door that might open into everything or might lock you out of home. Tessa stopped walking. Then she turned, slid her arms around my neck, and looked at me with that brave, soft face that had ruined me from the beginning. You're home, she said. You don't get locked out. I kissed her under a street lamp while the river moved beside us, and this time, nobody stole the moment. 6 months later, the apartment across the hall was mostly empty. Tessa claimed she was not moving in, just relocating some essentials. Apparently, essentials included 12 mugs, 4 plants, a stack of art books, half her closet, and a ceramic goose she insisted had excellent emotional boundaries. By spring, her name was on my mailbox beside mine. We painted the bedroom a warm green she chose. She put sunflowers on the kitchen table every Friday, not because she needed to reclaim anything, but because she liked how they looked in morning light. Derek became a story with an ending. He violated the order once by emailing her, and that mistake cost him enough that he finally disappeared from our lives. Not dramatically, not satisfyingly, just completely. The quiet after him was the real victory. Tessa kept teaching art. I kept designing logos no one appreciated enough. We burned pancakes twice more before mutually agreeing waffles were safer. She read the unsent birthday cards and cried over the one where I'd written, I hope whoever loves you next knows how lucky he is. You absolute coward, she said, wiping her eyes. I was being poetic. You were being emotionally constipated. Both can be true. A year after that night, she came home from school carrying takeout, kicked my door shut with her heel and called, Boyfriend? In the kitchen? She appeared in the doorway, curls wild from rain, cheeks pink, wearing my old college t-shirt under her jacket. I looked at her standing there, alive, laughing, loved, and remembered the first time she had stood in that same doorway with mascara on her cheeks, asking if she could stay in my room because she needed to hear me breathe. Now she came home because she wanted to. She crossed the kitchen, set the food down, and kissed me like it was ordinary. Like it was ours. Behind her, sunflowers leaned toward the window, bright and open in the last gold light of the day. And I thought, this is the life after. Not a grand rescue. Not a perfect ending. Just her hand finding mine while the rain started again and both of us staying. What would you have done if your best friend came home from a date in tears and asked to stay in your room that night? Have you ever experienced something similar where friendship suddenly became something more in the middle of a scary moment? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.